Utah Senator, former Massachusetts governor, and 2012 presidential nominee Mitt Romney has announced he will not seek re-election in 2024.
I considered my age and the fact that at the end of a second term I would be in my mid-80s, and I think it's time for guys like me to get out of the way and have people in the next generation step forward.
And of course, the age of politicians has been a cause for concern lately. But age isn't the only political obstacle the 76-year-old Republican would face. There was also the threat of a primary challenge against Romney, who faced more than a little backlash from his own party for standing up to Donald Trump. Is there still room in the GOP for politicians like Romney? Or is the so-called Massachusetts Republican a thing of the past? I'm joined by Glen Johnson, who covered Romney with the Associated Press and the Boston Globe. He's also author of Window Seat on the World, an inside account of the 4 years he spent working for Secretary of State John Kerry. Glen, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Katie.
So I introduced you a little bit, but I'd love it if you could run down for me just how long and in what context you've covered Mitt Romney.
Well, from the beginning of his tenure as governor, in fact, even before, I was working in the Globe's Washington bureau back in at the time of the Salt Lake Olympics, and pitched to an editor going out to Salt Lake City and seeing if I could confront him about these rumors that he was thinking about coming back to Massachusetts and challenging Jane Swift and running for the Republican nomination. I got the green light, flew out there, chased him around for a couple days, and finally, over dinner that he and his wife Ann were having in his office at the Olympic complex, got him to talk a little bit about why he might run, and actually had Ann Romney almost blurt out that they were going to run. That became the opening anecdote for the story that ultimately was written about it. Fast forward to him the whole 4 years that he served as governor, through the tunnel ceiling collapse, the whole ramp up to his campaign to run for president, which virtually started the day that he became governor, and then on to the floor of the convention hall when he was nominated to be the Republican national presidential candidate. So it's been a big sweep, and then an element and a moment in there when we had a infamous confrontation on a Staples floor down in Greenville, South Carolina as well. So the whole sweep of his time as governor.
We actually, I think, have a clip of that infamous confrontation you mentioned there.
Yeah. That was, it was sort of people seeing the sausage being made of running for president, but it kind of got at one of the characteristics of Mitt Romney, which was near duplicity, where he would say something but act another way. He ran for governor of Massachusetts as a fiscal Republican and as a fiscal conservative and a sort of social liberal, and as soon as he became governor, shifted course. And that kind of has been a hallmark of his career as both a presidential candidate and now as a senator.
I think we can play that clip as well
Sure.
to just illustrate what you're talking about there.
I don't have lobbyists running my campaign. I don't have lobbyists that are tied to my...
That is not true. Ron Kaufman is a lobbyist. How can you say that you don't have a lobbyist?
Did you hear what I said? Did you hear what I said, Glenn?
You don't have lobbyists running your campaign?
I said I don't have lobbyists running my campaign, and he's not running my campaign.
He's one of your senior advisors.
He's an advisor, and the person who runs my campaign is Beth Myers, and I have a whole staff of deputy campaign managers.
There's window dressing. He's a potted plant on your plane.
Ron is a wonderful friend and advisor. He's not paid. He's an advisor like many others. But I do not have lobbyists running my campaign.
So we can see there Mitt Romney willing to stand up to a reporter. Certainly, in recent years, he's emerged as someone who's willing to go up against members of his own party. Does that track with what he was like when he was governor here in Massachusetts?
Well, I mean, as governor of Massachusetts, he led a somewhat cloistered existence. When he became governor, up went the velvet ropes. Reporters couldn't walk into the governor's office complex. He had a reserved elevator to go in and out of the office. There was a lot of structure to it. Some of it made sense. All communication went through Eric Fernstrom, his communications director. So there was like a business-like atmosphere to the way the governor's office and the state government was run. But there was also, a prelude to what you could see later of him setting up presidential run and his national sort of positions on things. And so as he became a national figure, he tracked a little bit differently than he had when he came into office in Massachusetts.
Interesting, yeah, and I imagine the dynamic's a little different having to work with the Democratic legislature here.
Right. I mean, he had a huge role in playing in passing universal health care for Massachusetts. Mm-hmm. And he went up on stage in Faneuil Hall and he signed that with Ted Kennedy standing there. And I remember Ted Kennedy telling the story later that John McCain, who foresaw Mitt as a potential presidential candidate and himself had presidential aspirations, McCain saying to Teddy before he left Washington to go up to the bill signing, "Make sure you hug Romney real tight, Teddy," because he wanted that picture of Mitt, the conservative Republican, ostensibly, with Teddy, the liberal lion of the Senate. Yeah, very funny.
So one of the things I know I've been hearing the past couple of days as people react to, sure, Mitt Romney's saying it's time for a new generation, but he also, would he be able to make it through a primary? That's a lot of what people were saying when Charlie Baker announced that he wasn't going to seek another term of governor as governor here. Do you think there's still room in the Republican Party, in the political landscape writ large, for these kinds of, Republicans that Massachusetts is so fond of electing as governor?
I think in Massachusetts, Charlie had a much different landscape and probably could have endured. But both at the state level and the national level, you have this very difficult situation where you have the extremes of both parties with a hammerlock on the primary process. And for a candidate to win elective office, they have to get through a primary. And so if you have to go very far to either the left or the right to win a nomination, it makes it harder to come to the center, which is where the balance of votes are for a general election. And so Charlie faced, this very, discordant, out of step Republican primary electorate that he probably could have gotten through, but had a stranglehold on the party leadership. Mitt, at a national level, and especially in a state like Utah, which is solidly Republican, was going to face a greater challenge. So it's kind of typical for him. There's a lot of reasons for him to want to leave now. He's 76. He's got millions in the bank. He has more grandchildren than you can count on two hands. And so there's a lot of reasons for him to want to step aside now. But the reality is he did face a difficult primary challenge. And so out of a challenge like that, he's seeking virtue. He's talking about the broader lessons about politicians knowing when it's time to step aside, and he's also avoiding the embarrassment of a potential primary loss. It's all very Mitt Romney.
That's great. Lot to work into that one announcement, I guess.
Yes.
Glen, thank you so much for taking the time to run it down with us. I really appreciate it.